where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
Hi, Willow.
Hi. Sorry, it's been forever since I've been here.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah. My kids got RSV and then passed it along to me, and that's the worst poem I've ever written. And yeah, I still sound like shit, but you know what? We're gonna
doing
get
it.
through it.
We're doing it. I don't want a big preamble. We have a long episode for you today, so enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let Willow get through it, so I'm not going to get on the soapbox too much or be unhinged. Also, I just don't have it in me. All the life has been sucked.
Oh, you'll have plenty of time to be on. This guy is infuriating. This took me so long to put the research together because I just kept getting so pissed off. So I guess trigger warning for blood pressure. But also trigger warnings for really rough shit. I'm going to leave as many details out as possible, but sexual assault, child sexual assault, descriptions of crime scenes and injuries, and a little bit of talk about mental health, but this guy's creepy. So this is the dating game killer, Rodney Alcala. Now, he's the dating game killer comes from this very chilling section of television history that, I mean, he was only on the air for a few minutes, but I think it's an appropriate moniker because of just how disgusting the fact that he was on television while being a serial killer. He had already killed countless women and then continued to kill. Like, the fact, the audacity of him stepping in front of a camera on live TV, saying his true name. I don't know. And there's a level of creepiness whenever his eyes hit that camera. It just makes my bones shiver.
I'm familiar with this case, and I have seen the footage, and it's just...
Don't like. I have a link. We can insert it in the caption so that way you guys can watch it and see what I'm talking about. Hopefully most of our listeners are old enough to know what the dating game is.
Go ahead and explain that shit.
I realize that I'm living in a time of my life where things that were very normal to me as a child are no longer normal to grown adults. So basically, if you don't know what the dating game is, it is, in my words, like Soul Train and The Bachelor combined. What do you think, Lillian? Is that a good description?
I think
Soul Train
nobody
Bachelor?
knows what the Soul Train is either.
Oh my God, really?
It's old as shit. It's old. It's as old as the dating game.
Well, Soul Train...
It's not on anymore.
Soul Train aired until 2006. Oh, they're grown adults that were born in 2006.
Yeah, honey. You need to... Walk it on back.
Shit. Soul Train was the best show that ever aired.
Well, the dating game was this. It was a game show where there were contestants. There was either one man or one woman, and then several bachelors or several bachelorettes. They couldn't see each other. They asked a bunch of questions, and the lady picked, sight unseen, whoever appealed to her the most.
Right. It was one of the first dating game shows, like a form of television that took dating into entertainment. It had never, I mean, it had been done a little bit before, but this one was the one that was actually popularized. And it was very like 60s, 70s style. They had like the circle swivel stages that were super fucking cool. And like the really long microphones and like lapels and hair and lights. I don't know. It was a sight. It was a vibe.
Very 70s it was.
Very 70s.
I wonder how much cocaine was present.
I think the fact that the lens isn't quite in focus is because of the cocaine in the air. Like that blurry haze as the cocaine. But yeah, it was very heavily scripted and full of like really like quirky sexual innuendos. Like, it's just how it was written. On this particular episode, which aired September 13th, 1978, little did anyone at the time know a serial killer was amongst the waiting bachelors. Someone who at this point had already killed 7 women that we know of, and women and girls, of course, and would go on to kill many more. In hindsight, it gives me chills to hear the announcer's voice, because he's bachelor number 1. He's the first one that comes out. And so, like, as the show begins, the announcer says, bachelor number 1 is a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the dark room at the age of 13, fully developed. Between takes, you might find him skydiving, motorcycling. Please welcome Rodney Alcala. And
Jesus fucking Christ.
It's really gross, especially because of the crimes that he commits against children.
Yeah.
To say that.
Yeah. And,
and then
they write those things themselves.
Right. And then the fact that he mentions a motorcycle, there's a very famous image of a girl that he killed with a motorcycle. I know that's, whatever, we'll get there later, but it's just real creepy. And there's no way for the writers to have known that. But, in hindsight. So, in the scene, the camera pans to this man. And, I mean, at first look, sure, he looks handsome. He's got, a symmetrical face. Big hair. Big fucking 70s hair.
Everybody had big hair back then.
Yeah. If you squint, he looks like somebody who would be on a magazine cover. But the way his eyes hit the camera, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because I already know what he did. It's just fucking creepy. You can see the fucking devil in him. And everyone on set said that he was off-putting. He made weird comments. He was kind of creepy, and no one really wanted to be around him. On camera, though, he did come across as the one selected of the 3 potential bachelors. He came across as the one that they had already pre-selected to be the more confident and charming one. It was honestly, it was the hair. And it was, obviously already predetermined that she was going to pick that bachelor.
Oh yeah. Most all game shows are rigged. Especially back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I saw the statistics. It was something like I forgot. I think only 20 people on the show ever got married. And honestly,
it went on forever too.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have it right here. It actually aired from 1965 to 1989. There were over 2,000 dates that were matched. Many opted out. The majority that actually went on the dates that were provided, only 20 couples actually got married. And so when Cheryl Bradshaw was the bachelorette, asking the questions and picking the date, she ended up picking bachelor number 1. And when she got off stage, she immediately pulled the producers aside and were like, no, I am not going on a date with that man. He is fucking creepy. And I mean, it wasn't a red flag necessarily, because most bachelorettes did this. You know what I mean? They did it all for the camera, and then they were like, no. No. So that was honestly more normal and more common than not. But yeah, and in hindsight, she obviously dodged a very dangerous bullet, because the man that had aired on the dating show as a handsome, eligible bachelor was already a serial killer about to kill more. Him showing his face on national TV was bold and deliberate. By the time Rodney Alcala made it to the dating show, he had already sexually assaulted a child, murdered a woman, made it to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, stood trial, served a few years in prison, got out, registered as a sex offender, and killed again and again and again. And by the time he got on that camera, he was smirking directly in the lens, because he knew exactly what he did, and he knew exactly what he could do without getting caught.
Jesus.
I fucking hate this man. So Rodney Alcala. He was born August 23rd, 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. He was the third of 4 children born to Mexican immigrants, Raul and Ana Maria. When Rodney was around 7 to 8 years old in 1951, his father moved their family to Mexico. 3 years later, he left, abandoned all 4 children with their mother, and they never saw him again. In 1954, Rodney was around 11 years old when Ana Maria moved the family back to the United States and settled in Los Angeles. He did really well in school. His grades were impeccable. He was well-spoken and polite. He was popular amongst his peers. He helped his mother at home. He seemed like an angel, a very well-rounded kid, highly intelligent. He was smart. He was kind. He was thoughtful. He was on the yearbook committee. He ran track and field. He went to several private schools before graduating from Cantwell's Sacred Heart of Mary High School in Montebello, California, a suburb of Los Angeles. He seemed to be well established, bright, well spoken, and now a responsible young man. He joined the United States Army as soon as he graduated at age 17 in 1961, and pretty much right away, people started to notice things were off about him. It's just so weird how he could just like put on the charm around everyone in his life, and as soon as he got out of his house and away from his mother, he could just blossom into the most disgusting and vile human being. Like it was just like
the mask came right on off.
He just took it right off. He can put it on and take it off at will. Like, this man's insane.
Yeah, that's creepy.
It's really creepy. He's so charming. So his commanding officer made several notes about Rodney being insubordinate, as they put it. He also wrote that he was manipulative and vindictive. He was described as a sexual deviant and was noted for several instances of assault on women. Just notes in a little folder somewhere. No actual charges, of course. In 1964, he had what was only described as a nervous breakdown and went AWOL, which I honestly never knew what AWOL meant because I just heard it and never saw it written out. I didn't know it was all capitals and that it actually meant something. It actually means absence without leave. I'm sure you already knew that. But yeah, he took absence without leave.
I did know that, as a matter of fact.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you could probably tell me if I asked. But yeah, basically, it wasn't a medical leave. It was just a leave. He went AWOL and then he hitchhiked to Fort Bragg in North Carolina, all the way across the United States to his mother in California, which in 1960s was fairly normal. I think most people hitchhiked back and forth from coast to coast all the time. When he got to his mother's house, he saw a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and discharged from the army. He was also later diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and malignant narcissism with pathology and sexual sadism comorbidities. He went on to UCLA's School of Art and Architecture and later went to NYU and studied under the Roman Polanski.
Yuck.
Which, saying his name with my own mouth
makes me want to fart. It just fills me full of gas.
It feels like a fart coming out of my own mouth.
Coming out the wrong
in which
hole.
I can taste.
You're tasting your turd wind. That's what you're doing.
He is turd wind.
I know. I hate it. Fucking rapist.
So, yeah, if you don't know, Roman Polanski drugged and sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl in 1977 after a Vogue swimsuit shoot in which the young girl was a model at a pool in Jack Nicholson's house, which I just thought was very strange. Then he fled to the United States to France and hid out under extradition laws. Now, when Roman Polanski got mad at the judge in his case, he was quoted as saying, quote, "If I had killed somebody, it wouldn't have had so much appeal to the press, you see? But fucking, you see? The young girls Judges want to fuck young girls. Juries want to fuck young girls. Everyone wants to fuck young girls.
Nah.
I mean, we don't. But you look at the industry, you look at anyone in the higher ups, you look at the government, you look at the church, you look at the this, you look at the that. It's disgusting. Which, you know, as we all know, you are who you surround yourself with. And Rodney was much worse than Roman Polanski. Morgan Rowan was also only 13 years old when she first encountered Rodney Alcala in 1965. She met Rodney in a parking lot outside of the Hula Baloo nightclub, hanging out with friends. It was super popular, a super popular nightclub in North Hollywood. Lots of famous people would go there. Teens were known to hang out, like, outside the venue in the parking lot to, like, I don't know, have lot parties and meet the celebrities that were walking in, like maybe get a glance, like maybe get a autograph, whatever. It was a fun time. And Morgan was there with her friends. Morgan happened to look over and see this cute boy who locked eyes with her. I'm not sure she realized at the time that he was 22. To her, Rodney was tall, attractive, very charismatic. Nothing about him seemed dangerous. He seemed charming. Her friends saw the two looking at each other, and one of her friends leaned over to Morgan and said, "Hey, that's Rod." He kept looking over at her, smiling. He waved at one of them to come over, so she decided to make her move. He was very happy. He was goofy. He was carrying on a lighthearted conversation. Her friend ended up walking away to say hi to someone else, leaving just Morgan and Rodney and his friend. Morgan didn't mind her friend leaving. She really liked Rodney, and she kind of wanted some alone time with him. So he put his arm around her, hugging her tight, smiling, laughing. She ran her finger, like the nail, just like up and down his arm, just ever so lightly caressing his arm in a cute, flirty way. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he grabbed her and he pulled her into an alley behind the club. He slammed her against the wall so hard she hit her head against the brick, knocking herself unconscious.
Jesus Christ.
Literally out of nowhere. He beat her mercilessly. He stood her limp body upright against the wall, pushed a nearby dumpster up against her chest, pinning her to the building, standing upright. And when Morgan came to, she couldn't move. She called for help. The club owner and his wife rushed out to help her. She didn't tell anyone about this. Her friends, her parents had no idea. I'm sure there were many things racing through her mind, the social implications of a young girl flirting with an older man. She probably thought she'd get in trouble. And she didn't want to worry her parents. She didn't go out much after that. She laid low. She kept to herself. She was too fearful that she might see him again. She tried to put this bizarre and very terrifying incident behind her, but 3 years later, when Morgan was 16, she unfortunately would run into Rodney again. In August of 1968, Morgan's family decided to move back home across the country to New York City. She was devastated. She just moved to LA right before her encounter with Rodney. She had made so many amazing friends. She was finally finding normalcy. She didn't want to leave. So she decided to have one last hurrah with her friends as a going-away party. She thought one last night out wouldn't hurt. It had been so long anyways. It's such a big city. She'd be with friends. It'd be fine. She joined friends on the Sunset Strip. Hundreds of people walking up and down the strip, club to club. Music's playing. Everyone's dancing. The party was in the street just as much as it was in the club. So a lot of underage people literally just hung out in the street. You couldn't get in the club, but you can drink, you can smoke, you can dance, you can meet people. Like, it was a good time. Morgan was just really full of the excitement, meeting new people, and serendipity of it all. The girls were having a great time when all of a sudden Rodney appeared in the crowd. Morgan instantly was creeped out. A few hours later, her friends came up to her and said, "Hey, we're all going to IHOP. You want to go?" She was like, "Yeah, it's IHOP." So the girls all pile into a friend's car, And then all of a sudden, Rodney gets in the driver's seat. He starts the engine. Morgan is sitting in the back seat looking at him in the rearview mirror, terrified. He looks up at her in the rearview mirror and makes eye contact. As much as humanly possible throughout the entire drive. And it just makes her just extremely uncomfortable. Once they all get seated at IHOP, Rodney completely ignores her. He acts like she's not there. Morgan gets up to go to the restroom. She passes by a payphone. She ponders calling her parents. She felt extremely uneasy, and all she wanted to do was go home. Her dad, the thing with her dad was he would always tape a dime inside of all of her shoes just in case she ever needed to call home. So she got that dime out of her shoes. She held it up to the payphone, but she didn't drop it in. She thought about how, she kind of had like this ticking time clock with her friends. She only had so much time left before she might not ever see them again. She thought that maybe she could play it cool. She's got her friends. She should be okay. Everything should be okay. So she decided to go back to the table. Rodney suggested that they all go to his apartment afterwards. Apparently there was a party there already going on. Her friends all agreed to join. She didn't want to ruin the vibe. She didn't want to have to explain why she didn't want to go. So she went along with them. It was your typical party. Loud music, people talking, drinking, all packed in together. Morgan tried to not make it noticeable, but she was so uncomfortable. She was too nervous to sit still, so she just kind of wandered from room to room with a drink in her hand. She was just trying to play it cool when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rodney comes up from behind her, grabs Morgan by the arm, throws her into a nearby room, closes the door, and locks it. She fell to the ground. She looked up at him standing over her with a metal bar in his hand. He stared at her ominously before placing the bar into brackets he had fashioned on either side of the door, literally barring the door shut.
That is so scary.
That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
She knew it was about to get real bad.
Yeah.
She started backing up, terrified, until she hit the wall. He began walking towards her, taking off his belt and wrapping it around his hand. She tried to distract him by saying, you can't keep me in here. And just as she said that, he punched her right between the eyes. Her head hit the wall behind her, and she saw stars. Rodney grabbed a knife from his pocket, cut a tie off of her neck, slicing her neck in the process. Blood flowed from her neck as he cut off the rest of her clothing. He put the knife on the floor next to him and undressed himself. He sexually assaulted her. Morgan fixated on the knife, just out of reach. She tried to think of anything other than what was happening to her. She thought maybe if she could somehow get on top of the knife, he wouldn't be able to kill her. Then all of a sudden, a loud commotion happens outside the door. It's her friends. They noticed she was gone and they'd come looking for her. As they're banging on the door, yelling for Morgan, Rodney gets angry and even more aggressive and ruthless in his assault. She's already lost so much blood. Her body is in so much pain. She starts going into shock. She starts to lose consciousness. All of a sudden, the window breaks, shatters right next to her. A rush of cool wind comes in. It's her friend Mike. He'd broken through the window. Everything stopped in that moment. Her friends rushed in. Rodney is standing there naked from the waist down, covered in her blood. Morgan bolted the second she could, running into the street with nothing on but a ripped blouse, covered in blood. Her friend Mike caught up with her. He begged her to get help. But she was adamant that she couldn't let her parents know. She couldn't. It would destroy them, especially her mother. She said, quote, "My mother was fragile. My mother would not have been able to handle it." Someone at the party called police, but Morgan refused to cooperate with the officers. They had enough evidence to arrest Rodney at that moment, but since she didn't want to press charges, they left and went on like nothing happened. Mike did end up convincing her to at least come back to his place so that way she could get cleaned up, get some fresh clothes, and be safe until she got home. A few weeks later, Morgan is in New York City. They had just moved. She's trying to, gather her life in this new city again, and she gets a letter in the mail from one of her friends. It's a newspaper clipping. It's an article on Rodney Alcala. He'd sexually assaulted and strangled an 8-year-old girl. She was in a coma in critical condition, and she wasn't likely to survive. Second grader Tally Shapiro, no relation to Ben, was happily walking down Sunset Boulevard on her way to school, elementary school, on the morning of September 25th, 1968. She's got her hair all done. The weather was nice and warm. She was skipping in a crocheted dress that her grandmother had made her with cute little white Mary Jane shoes. When Rodney fucking Alcala pulls up next to her and asks her if she wants a ride to school. She says no, I don't talk to strangers, and kept walking. And he continues to pull forward slowly and told her that he knew her parents. And she says, well, her parents were friends with everyone, and she's 8 years old. She assumes that this adult is telling the truth, that he knows her parents, and she knows her parents' friends well enough to know that they wouldn't want her. If they saw her walking out, they would definitely give her a ride to school. Yeah. So she trusts him, and she gets in the car.
And this is in the time before real, honest-to-goodness stranger danger talks with kids.
1968.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Right. Her parents had the conversation with her. But again...
But not as in-depth, as my mom was like, even if somebody's dressed as a policeman or a mailman or a nurse or a doctor. Yeah.
It's because of instances like this that those conversations were opened up later on.
Like my mom would say, I will never send a friend to pick you up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Luckily now we have cell phones, so,
we can verify some shit.
Yeah. Once in the car, he told her that he was a photographer. He told her all about the movie posters that he had made. He says, they're at my house. I can show you if you like. And then he asked her what time school started. He's like, your school's right there, right around the corner. We have plenty of time. So she agrees. I mean, she's like, yeah, we do. And, you're an adult. I'm going to listen. And honestly, his career that he had talked about with famous people in Hollywood seemed really exciting to this little girl. Plus she was, respecting her elders. She accepted. And just as they walked inside his apartment, she remembers stepping over the threshold. And that's it. I don't even know if she remembers placing her foot down on the ground. That's how quickly Rodney Alcala struck her over the head.
My God.
It was in that moment that 25-year-old Rodney Alcala struck little 8-year-old Tally over the head with a metal pole. Luckily, she wouldn't remember what happens next. So trigger warnings. Also, she had a bit of a guardian angel, thankfully. A man driving by happened to see Rodney luring a little girl into his car. He followed him, witnessed him leading the little girl into his apartment, and called police. When the police arrived at the scene, they knocked on the door. A man came to the door and cracked it open, saying, "Hold on a minute. I just got out of the shower." And the police officer looks at him and notices he's not wet. He's naked, but he's not wet. So the officer, tells him to put some clothes on. He waits maybe a couple seconds and he's like, no, I can't. He knows there's a little girl in there and a naked man. So he breaks into the house and just as he breaks into the house, the perpetrator took off running through the back door. He could see a trail of blood leading to the kitchen. He called for backup, rounded the corner to find little white Mary Jane shoes. next to a pool of blood. More blood than should ever have come out of a body so small. And these pictures are available online. And when you see those little white Mary Jane shoes.
I've seen them.
Oh my God. Tally laid lifeless on the floor, badly beaten and bloody. The metal rod used to beat her was laying across her neck after it was used to strangle her. She wasn't breathing. The officer had a decision to make. Does he chase after the man who did this, possibly catching him? Or does he try to help this little girl? He did the one thing he was not supposed to do. He touched the crime scene. He took that metal pole off that little girl's neck. And as soon as he did that, she gasped for air.
Thank God.
She was alive. An ambulance arrived at the scene and rushed her to the hospital. None of the doctors believed that she would survive. She had 27 stitches to her skull. She was in a coma for 32 days. And miraculously, she did, in fact, survive. It took her several months in a hospital treatment to walk again and regain her normal physical abilities. Tally said that her parents never spoke of what happened to her. They wanted her to remain a child. It was almost a blessing that she didn't remember what happened. Her story hit the news, and her parents thought it best that they moved their daughter somewhere where she wouldn't be known as the little girl who almost died. The family moved to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and she grew up happy, far away from Rodney Alcala, safe with a childhood. As far as Morgan Rowan was concerned, what happened to Tally was partially, if not fully, her fault. When she saw the news about Rodney Alcala and this 8-year-old victim, she felt immense guilt for not turning him in, for not killing him herself. Tally was so young. The media never released her name or her image or anything. She didn't know anything about this little girl except for she was 8 years old. Morgan continuously kept tabs on this case over the years, constantly searching for any sign of what became of this little girl. She had no name, she had no face. She pored over newspapers at the library, called various agencies to see if she could get any information at all, just to see if the little girl had lived through the coma. But there was nothing. She wouldn't know until decades later during his last trial that the little girl did in fact survive, and the two of them would be among the survivors that took him down, thankfully. After Tally was rushed to the hospital, the apartment that she was found in was searched, and a UCLA college ID was found with the name Rodney Alcala from the photography department. Amongst other belongings of his, they found a stash of hundreds upon hundreds of photos that Rodney had taken of young girls and young boys.
They haven't matched all those photos to this day.
A very small percentage. A minuscule percentage.
Compared to what he has, his stash, yeah.
They're not even allowed to release most of them.
Because they're so fucked up. There is a website.
Yes.
So we will link
I do have a link, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I looked through the ones that are available online, and he's a damn good photographer, I'll give him that. Fucking hate him. I'm so mad. Okay. Oh, I really got to pull it together on this one.
Yeah, you do.
I'm having a rough time. Police went to the university to interview his professors and people close to Rodney. They all sang his praises, saying that he was a wonderfully nice guy. He would never hurt anyone. There's no way it could have been Rodney. They got the wrong guy. But even if they had the right guy, they wouldn't be able to find him. He'd already skipped town. He was broadcasted on FBI's Most Wanted. Posters of his face were everywhere. It wasn't until 3 years later in 1971 that police would finally catch a break in the Rodney Alcala case, when 2 young girls in New Hampshire, not far from where Morgan Rowan was living, had seen the most wanted posters and recognized the man in the photos as their camp counselor, John Berger. The creep had changed his name and gotten a job teaching photography at an all-girls teen summer camp.
God.
He was also allegedly at this time dating the owner of the camp's teenage daughter. He's 28.
Barf. The fuck?
Yep. And he's on the run for murder. So, yeah. When Rodney fled LA, he went straight to New York City, where Morgan Rowan was. He changed his name to John Berger and enrolled in NYU Film School. It's unclear if he had any other victims during these 3 years. I think we can all assume that he did, because he's very rhythmic with his killings. But what we do know is that in spring of 1971, he met a beautiful 23-year-old flight attendant named Cornelia Michael Criley. Cornelia grew up in Queens. The firstborn of 5 children, her parents absolutely adored her. She seemed to have it all. The looks, the talent, the charisma, the determination. Cornelia was described by her boyfriend as having a beautiful face. She carried herself extremely sophisticatedly. She had just been hired on at TWA, Trans World Airlines, and was so beyond excited for all the wonderful new things that were happening in her life. Which, can I just say, in the late 60s and the early 70s, being a stewardess is like, that's like the dream. That's the dream.
Job.
That's it. That's
Not
where it's
now.
at. No.
There's no more regulations. Don't get in a plane.
No.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of planes.
I'm scared anyway. Fuck this shit.
Honestly, I'm probably wrong about this, but in my mind, the stewardess of today is the bank teller. I want to be a bank teller so bad. I know I will never be a bank teller, but I want to be.
It's a real weird dream to have, but you go right ahead.
Oh, it's super stupid, and I have tattoos on my hands, so I'm not gonna be, hired. But yeah, she was living the dream of all dreams in 1971. She was currently at the time in the process of moving in with her boyfriend, Leon. It was temporary, but still exciting. Her plan was to move out of her parents' house in with her boyfriend for just a little bit while she waited for an apartment around the corner to open up. She had planned to move into this new apartment with her best friend and fellow stewardess, her coworker. It was going to be the perfect life, living with her best friend while her boyfriend lives right around the corner. They're traveling the world together, making exciting memories, new places. I mean, it just seems like it was everything. It was going to be amazing. Until she met a certain photographer on June 24th, 1971. Cornelia had spent that day moving into her boyfriend's apartment. She was supposed to be unpacking when Leon came home from work. But the door was locked, and it wouldn't open. He called out to her, but no one was there to answer. He tried calling the apartment phone. No one picked up. He knew something was wrong. He called police. When police entered the apartment, they found Cornelia. She had been stripped naked, bound, gagged, strangled with her own nylon stockings. Bite marks covered her breasts. But with over 2,000 killings in New York City in 1971 alone, the police had their work cut out for them. They took evidence, but the case went cold pretty quickly. It wouldn't be until decades later, we're going to see a lot of this, where the case goes cold, and decades later, because of DNA, it's finally linked. But she had nothing linking her to Rodney Alcala. He was literally just, and I think that's why he got away with so much, is he would just literally meet people on the street, kill them that day. No correspondence with them before or after. You know what I mean? Like, nothing ties him to these victims. It's terrifying. So luckily, those 2 girls had seen his most wanted poster, and luckily those 2 young girls happened to see John Berger and his photos stapled to the post office bulletin board later that year, and the FBI were able to make their arrest. Rodney was sent to California for kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder of Tally Shapiro. But Tally Shapiro's parents had moved her to Mexico. They didn't want their daughter to stand trial. They wanted to protect her. And since there were no key witnesses, Rodney took a plea deal. He was only convicted of child molestation and received 1 year to life. He convinced a psychologist that he was rehabilitated and was released in 1974 after only 34 months, less than 3 years. When he got out, he was registered as a sex offender, but no one ever really looked into it. He worked as a typesetter for LA Times. He continued photography, doing weddings and events. He continued taking indecent photos of men, women, and children, passing it off as fashion photography. He'd boast about his work to his coworkers, and if any of them were to ask him, like, about the decency of his work, he'd say that the parents had asked him to take those photos, and it was fashion. He's a professional. And because of his charisma, people just took his word for it. He decided to move back to New York City, and the year is 1977. It's the year of the Sons of Sam. The streets are full of fear, chaos. Police have their hands full. New York seemed to be the perfect place for a photographer/murderer to hide. It seems as though he went on a bit of a road trip on his way to New York City. It wasn't until decades later that he was connected to a murder in Wyoming. Christine Thornton was a 28-year-old free spirit, a well-loved daughter, a sister, and a best friend. Her family last heard from her in June of 1977. She was a few months pregnant and had left her family in San Antonio to go traveling with her boyfriend with plans to see Montana. She had called her mom to tell her mom that she had broken up with her abusive boyfriend and she was on the road. She said that she was much happier and seemed extremely optimistic, given her circumstances. She was last seen hitchhiking on her way to Biloxi, Mississippi. After that, there was no trace of Christine whatsoever. She was 6 months pregnant at the time. Her family believed that her abusive ex had something to do with her murder, but they just couldn't prove it because, well, they couldn't find her. Her sister and loved ones fought to find Christine for nearly 40 years when in 2013, a certain photo that was taken by a certain serial killer was found in the group of photos that were being circulated. Many individuals are still unidentified, and there was potential that most, if not all, were potential victims. Her sister stumbled across a photo that looked like Christine, a woman with dark hair and a yellow shirt, smiling on a motorcycle in the desert. It looked just like her. They looked closer, and the girl was wearing flip-flops, and there it was, Christine's cute little toe. It was very distinctive and very Christine. That was her. That was her in the photo. Soon, a connection was made to a body found by a rancher near Granger, Wyoming in 1982, 5 years after her disappearance. The case had quickly gone cold with no trace of where she'd come from or who'd done this to her or who she even was. She was named Granger Greta until DNA confirmed her identity as Christine Thornton. The girl in the photo was taken a few feet away from where her body was found. The place in which her body was found is literally in the background of the photo.
That's so scary.
Which is terrifying when you look at the photos now.
Yeah, and think about each one of them.
I really do believe this is part of his pattern.
Oh, for sure.
He lures people in for photography.
Yep.
He takes their photo, kills them directly after, so that way he can capture the last look on their face before they know they're being murdered.
Yep, I think so too.
Because if you look at the expressions on their faces in the photo reels, they all look so comfortable with him.
They do.
They all look so happy and so comfy. And I think he gets off on that shit. It's gross. Okay. 23-year-old Helen Hover had just finished college and was living in New York City when she met a very charming photographer who said that she was beautiful and said that he wanted to take her picture. She had a fine arts degree from UCLA and had studied had a fine arts degree in UCLA and had studied under Roman Polanski, worked for the LA Times, taught a summer camp. His stories sounded incredible, and he seemed trustworthy. She jotted down his name and phone number in her notebook. John Berger. Ellen was a lovely girl. She had a trusting heart and a kind demeanor. She had no idea who she was talking to. She'd grown up in Beverly Hills. Her father was Herman Hover, owner of Cairo's nightclub. What started as a speakeasy in the 1930s, by the 1970s, it was the nightclub destination for everything Hollywood. Ellen's father was good friends with many celebrities. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. were her godfathers.
Oh, damn.
Like, this girl lived amongst Hollywood royalty.
Yeah.
So for a photographer to approach her for a modeling gig...
Doesn't seem weird.
At all. That seems fairly normal. Plus, I mean, she's gorgeous, so... it seemed absolutely ordinary. Ellen was described by her cousin as, quote, almost heartbreakingly sweet. She went on to say, quote, her sweetness was a trait you sensed was permanent. Odd purity within what would become a rocky family. Everyone who would meet her sensed her trusting heart. I'm sure her killer sensed it too. Now, her cousin ended up writing a blog about her death and everything like that. And just to paraphrase it, their family had some really interesting twists and turns. Her cousin was also her stepsister for a short amount of time. They ended up growing up as best friends, and her cousin's father ended up having an affair with her mother, and it ended up tearing the family apart, and it ended up causing a rift within the cousins who were, best friends growing up. They ended up not talking to each other for years and years and years. Long story short, the couples ended up splitting up anyways. The cousins should have talked to each other, but they never did because of hearsay from family members. It was just really interesting, and I see this a lot, and I really hate how fucking weird things are, like how weirdly connected things are. But one of her family members had reached out to her and said, hey, you should contact Ellen. She's in New York. You're in New York. You should meet up with her. And she was like, nah, Ellen doesn't want to talk to me. Like, nah, we're not that close anymore. And it was like right after she was about to contact Ellen was when she ended up going missing and found murdered. And I don't know. It's one of those things where like, it was almost, I don't know. It was heartbreaking. That summer of 1977, Ellen had just finished college as a biology major and was looking forward to med school. She had broken up with her boyfriend and had just gotten her own apartment. It was small, but it was New York. She did find enough room in her living room for her baby grand piano, and honestly, that's all that really mattered. She was an amazing piano player. Ellen was last seen leaving her apartment on July 15th, 1977, heading out to lunch to meet up with a photographer she had just met. The only evidence found was her date book, with an appointment marked that day, meet with John Berger. Police knew it was Rodney, but they had nothing to arrest him on. Her remains wouldn't be discovered until 1978, buried under rocks on a hillside by the old Rockefeller estate, overlooking the Hudson River, near where a certain photographer had taken her photo. After that, Rodney went back to LA to go on a full-fledged murdering spree. Pamela Jean Lamson, also known as Pam, was 19 years old when she disappeared in 1977. She was a bright and happy girl. She was kind and funny and drop-dead gorgeous. But she was more than just pretty. She had a light that shone through her. In every photo that you look of her, she's just beaming, like her smile from ear to ear. There's a brightness in her eye. She just looked so exciting. She happened to be at an Oakland A's baseball game when a charismatic photographer approached her, offered her a modeling gig, and gave her his business card. To her, this was heaven sent. She wanted to be a model or an actress, something, and being scouted was the first step in making it in Hollywood. On October 9th, 1977, she went to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco to meet with this photographer and was never seen alive again. Her body was found nude, badly beaten, and strangled, dumped near a hiking trail north of San Francisco in Marin County, California. Police are convinced that Rodney Alcala was the one to blame for her murder, but because there are no fingerprints evidence and there was no hopes of recovering DNA, because of the time loss and because of the way it was preserved, this case remains cold without any official suspect.
So fucking annoying.
Isn't it? Because we all know.
It was him.
We know.
Yeah.
What other photographer would have done it? On November 9th, 1977, like, he really is just one after the other. He murdered 18-year-old Jill Terry Barkham, a runaway from Brooklyn. She was one of 11 kids. She played the trumpet in high school. She was small. She was barely 5 foot and less than 100 pounds. Her lifeless body was found discarded off a service road near Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles, near the famous Hollywood sign, just up the road from Marlon Brando's house. They were actually in the middle of shooting a film when they noticed her body in the background. Her body was laid posed, almost kneeling in fetal position, naked from the waist down. She'd clearly been sexually assaulted and beaten and strangled several times. She'd been strangled with a belt, pantyhose, and with blue rope ties. Her skull had been crushed. She had 3 bite marks on her breast. At first, investigators believed it was the work of the Hillside Stranglers, who were active at the time. They had left a body near the Hollywood sign right around this time. And they like to pose their victims, and they like to strangle them. So they really thought that they had them on this one. Jill did also have ties with one of their victim, Judith Miller. But when the 2 brothers or cousins were arrested, they never confessed to Jill's murder. Detectives in LA actually brought in Rodney Alcala in for questioning for the Hillside Strangler murders because he was on the sexual predators list. Remember, in that case, they took everyone from the sexual predators list. They fucking interviewed thousands of people. He obviously wasn't arrested for that, but he was arrested for giving a minor marijuana. He got 2 years in prison for that. That's almost how much time he got for almost killing an 8-year-old girl.
I was fixing to say, our country's just has always been just dumb. Just dumb as fuck.
What the fuck?
Because we don't care about women or girls.
It would take decades to match DNA from this evidence stored in a basement gathering dust to link Rodney Alcala to Jill Barkham's murder. After he got out of prison for selling weed to a kid, he went on the dating show, and then he went on to kill more. A month later, after Jill Barkham's murder, on December 16th, 1977, a 27-year-old nurse named Georgia Marie Wickstead was found dead in her Malibu apartment. Georgia was the middle of 3 children raised by a widowed mother who worked very hard to provide for her family. Her brother Michael acted as the man of the house, taking care of their youngest sister. When she was a teenager, she was hospitalized twice for extensive surgeries to remove tumors. This time in the hospital, along with the way that she was brought up, inspired her to become a nurse. She wanted to care for others the way that she was cared for. She had a true heart of gold. She was last seen driving her friend home from the bar. When she didn't show up to work that next day, her coworker called the police and reported her missing. Police arrived at her apartment and found her naked body posed on the bathroom floor. She'd been sexually assaulted and strangled with her nylon stockings. Her genitals had been mutilated, and she had been beaten with a hammer. It's just so senseless. Nothing at the scene linked the case to a suspect, so the case grew cold until the DNA would confirm decades later. There's a level of sorrow that I can't help but feel for the families, because it literally is one after the other with this case, and there's no way for me to really harp on the intensity for each individual victim. But these families are searching for the answers to their loved ones for 40 years. Every single victim that is not confirmed Rodney Alcala on day 1. Almost every single victim is searching. Their families are searching for answers for 40 fucking years. Most of the parents of these victims would never know the outcome.
No.
It's just disgusting. You know, it's heart-wrenching. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I lost my place. So on June 24th, 1978, an apartment manager in El Segundo, California, discovered the lifeless, nude body of a woman in the building's laundry room. She was lying face up with her hands behind her back. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled with a shoelace. None of the tenants had seen her before. There were no witnesses to the crime. No one had seen her enter. The case grew cold almost on impact. The woman's name was Charlotte Lee Lamb, but people called her Shug, which is so precious. She had long blonde hair and bright eyes, and she looked like an old Hollywood film actress. She was 32, born in Kentucky, raised in Ohio, the fourth of 8 children born to tenant farmers. She liked to paint, she liked to sing, and she liked to make her own clothes. After high school, she moved to L.A. with her boyfriend in 1978, or by 1978. She was living in Santa Monica, working as a legal secretary. Her family didn't find out about what had happened to her until 2 days after her body was found. It was her birthday. Or they didn't know that she was missing until 2 days after her body was found. Her sister had called to say happy birthday.
So sad.
But the phone just kept ringing. It wasn't until weeks later that her family actually found out what had happened to her. Unlike many of the victims, we have no idea how they met, but based on the photos that we do have of Shug, it's likely that he did as he did with every other woman, approached her, said that she was beautiful, wanted to take her photo. And thankfully, there is a silver lining to this case. Thankfully, he left a little bit of something behind. He left some DNA. So the DNA would be later on linked to Rodney Alcala. Until then, she remained amongst the hundreds of California's cold cases. A few months later, in September of 78, Rodney Alcala is in New York City. Oh, now he's in New York City filming for the dating game. And then a few months later, February 14th, 1979, it's Valentine's Day. Rodney Alcala picks up a 15-year-old hitchhiker in Riverside County. Her name is Monique Hoyt. He didn't care where she was headed. He took her straight to his apartment and he sexually assaulted her. Then he drove her out to Joshua Tree, where he had her pose for photos. Then assaulted her again and again. This one's rough. Ruthlessly. Even going so far as to take photos of himself while assaulting her. He gagged her with a t-shirt, took a rock, and began bludgeoning her head. But for some reason, he stopped. Many people speculate that she was able to talk to Rodney and throughout this ordeal, this abusive interaction, and they believe that she was possibly trying to convince him that they could possibly have a relationship. Like many victims do. I think it's a very smart move.
Yes,
humanize. Yes, absolutely. It seems as though she must have made him comfortable enough. There is a movie that was released about this case. Grain of salt watching it. I think that it was probably done very well cinematically. I haven't seen it personally, just because there was so many errors with the information. But it's called Women of the Hour, starring Anna Kendrick. But in that movie, they depicted her kind of trying to, act like they're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend. You know what I mean? Either way, however she charmed him or worked her magic, he did not kill her out at Joshua Tree. He beat her ruthlessly, but he got her in the car and they drove off. He stopped at a gas station. He got out to pee and she bolted.
Smart.
She went straight to police. Well, she went straight to the phone to call police. And he was arrested, but Rodney's mother bailed him out.
Real boy mom energy there.
I'm a boy mom, but I'm not that boy mom.
Girl, don't be saying it. You can't be saying it because then.
I mean, I have 2 boys.
No, it's like the TikTok boy
moms.
They're
No.
Scary.
No, I'm not a TM, trademark.
No, scary. Mom. No. Very bad.
But yeah, I like to place blame on Rodney's mother for the following murders because what the fuck? June 13th, 1979, Jill Marie Parenteau was 21 years old. I have a friend named Jill Marie, and that just kind of it hurt seeing the name. Was 21-year-old telephone operator living in Burbank, California. She had long brown hair and a bright smile. She was funny and smart, but she was shy at times. She was really excited to have just moved out of her parents' house, got her own apartment for the very first time. She was the youngest of the family, so I'm sure it was a big deal to her family as well. It was, empty nest season. Jill and her best friend, Catherine, did everything together. They liked to shop. They liked to share recipes. They often openly imagined where their life was taking them. They were young. They were happy. And they had their whole world ahead of them. And they were very wholesome. Very, very wholesome girls. One night in the summer of 1979, the 2 best friends went out to the Handlebar Saloon, a place where Rodney Alcala happened to frequent as well. The shy girl started talking to this charismatic, curly-haired photographer, but just for a little bit. It was very cordial, but it was very insignificant. And Jill just kind of was like, okay, and then went on with her friends. It was so insignificant you wouldn't really remember it by the end of the night, kind of thing. She didn't pay much attention to him throughout the night, but she had fun with her friends. They drank, they danced, they all went home. All seemed well and normal until Jill wasn't able to be reached the next day. Jill's body was found June 13th, 1979, in her apartment. She was naked and had been strangled. With no definitive evidence and no potential suspect, the case went cold. Until, obviously, 40 years later when DNA would confirm it. On June 20th, 1979, 12-year-old Robin Samso was hanging out with a friend named Bridget at Huntington Beach. A man had approached the 2 12-year-old girls, asking them if he could take their picture. Nothing happened. A woman nearby noticed the creepy man talking to the young girls, taking their picture, and confronted him. It scared him off, but the creepiness stuck out to the little girls, enough for them to feel like it was kind of important to remember. Her friend Bridget ended up actually letting her, because she had a dance recital to get to, and Bridget was like, well, take my bicycle. And she did, and she was never seen again. Police ended up getting a sketch artist to sit down with the girls and draw up the man that they had seen that day. Rodney's old parole officer had seen the sketch and immediately knew who it was. This led police to look into his mother, Anna Maria, knowing that he stayed at her house from time to time. This led police to discover a storage unit in Seattle linked to Rodney Alcala. Inside the storage unit were thousands of pictures of women and young girls, along with women's personal belongings, a treasure trove of evidence. Rodney Alcala was finally arrested in July of 1979 and held without bail. He was found guilty of Robin Samso's murder in 1980 and sentenced to death. The verdict was overturned by California Supreme Court in 1984 because the jurors were quote-unquote improperly informed of his prior sex crimes. His second trial in May of 1986, he was sentenced again to death. No change there. He tried appealing this case in 92 and again in 2003. But during that second one in 2003, DNA would link him to more murders, convicting him of the murders of 4 additional women: Jill Barkham, Georgia Wickstead, Charlotte Shug Lamb, and Jill Marie Parento. That trial was absolutely insane because Rodney had elected to act as his own defense.
These motherfuckers.
Oh my God. It was
so full of
so
themselves.
Weird. So for five fucking hours, this man... I'm laughing because I cannot imagine having to sit through this and go through the painful secondhand embarrassment. So for 5 hours, he stood at the stand and interrogated himself. He would use a deeper toned voice when he was acting as the attorney, and then a soft, pleasant voice when he was acting as himself. He would address himself as Mr. Alcala and went so far as to play Alice's Restaurant, the song, as like part of like, I don't even know if it was like submitted as evidence, but it was part of like something he was trying to say because he was trying to say that because of this one part of the song where because if you don't know what Alice's Restaurant is, I realize I'm an aging person and a lot of people might not know what that is.
What was it again?
Alice's Restaurant. Alice's Restaurant.
I remember that one.
It's a movie and it's a song. It's an old 60s movie.
Oh, no, I don't. I love movies from the like 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
I don't love movies from the 60s.
Yeah. I love movies from the 60s. I love the film quality of the 50s and 60s.
60s were rough.
I love it. Well, and like all the movies in the 60s are just like so dry. Like there's no background music. Like
yeah, I can't.
It's
that's why
very
I don't
dry.
like them. I'm just like,
yeah. I have a thing for cult classics. But that is a cult classic. So long story short, in the song, it's telling a story about Alice's Restaurant, and the main character in the story goes to a mental institution, and while in the mental institution, he's yelling, "Kill, kill, kill." And for some reason, in Rodney Alcala's brain, he thinks that this is proper to defend himself in court. It's really dramatic and really over the top, and I just really don't understand it. He never said he didn't kill the girls. He said he just didn't remember killing them. He tried to use different excuses as to how there was no way he could have killed certain victims because he wasn't there at the time of the murders. But every time he tried to say that he wasn't there, like it couldn't have been him, they were like, yeah, you were. And here's how I can prove it. He tried to say that one victim's earring wasn't actually the victim's earring because if it was, that means he would have had the earring while he was aired on the TV show. So he played that TV show for everybody to watch, made everybody sit through it.
Oh, God.
Played it to say, see, I'm not wearing the earring. Like,
that's not what we were saying, you fool.
We didn't say you wore it. We said you had it and that you killed her. And you did because your DNA was found on her. All righty. Yeah, I don't know. It was a show. It was a show.
It was a circus. Yeah.
It was a circus. Several survivors came forward to testify against Rodney. Monica Hoyt, the 15-year-old hitchhiker, and Morgan Rowan, the first one of his victims, and a surprise witness showed up at the very end of the trial to seal the deal. Tally Shapiro.
Yeah.
She stole the whole show. Her parents had since died, passed away. Healthy, natural causes. They had lived a beautiful, wonderful, happy life. She thought it was time that now that her parents are passed, now she can come forward and talk about it.
Yeah.
Let her parents have peace. So it took less than 2 days for the jury to convict him of all 5 counts of first-degree murder. In March of 2010, Rodney Alcala was sentenced to death for the 3rd time. In 2013, a Manhattan judge sentenced him to an additional 25 years to life for the murders of Cornelia Criley and Ellen Hover, since the death penalty was not available.
Right.
He unfortunately died of natural causes at the ripe old age of 77 in a comfortable hospital bed, being taken care of, nothing like what he deserved. After his 3rd conviction in 2010, California and New York police departments gathered together all the images that they had collected from Rodney. They released 120 to the public. Over 900 of them could not be released due to the sexual pornographic nature. Mm-hmm. Morgan Rowan was among the women identified. Many families came forward, but most have not yet been confirmed. They are still posted, and honestly, like I said, you can really tell he's a good photographer. Like, these photos are good.
You never know if you recognize them.
You never know. Or maybe the place, maybe the background, maybe an article of clothing you can notice. I don't know. There's little things. With the way he was almost had a rhythm to his killings, you know what I mean? It was almost every so months, every chance he got. It's likely that he killed many, many more.
Oh, yeah.
Many people suspect that he killed upwards of like 200 people. He is believed to be one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, but we don't hear much about him because of his charm, and that is just vile. Vile. He's vile.
It's gross.
It's gross.
Okay, go ahead and we'll talk about the GoFundMe.
Yeah, we're not gonna have business time, but
not today. I want to take space for this, please.
Yeah, I know that you've mentioned this before in the previous episode, but I would like to just kind of officially talk about our friend Sophie, who was murdered. It's so hard. Yeah, it is so hard to say my friend was murdered. Yeah. On a podcast where I have just talked about how many countless women being brutally victimized and murdered.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this today.
This was hard.
Yeah.
But for me to say the sentence, my friend was murdered.
Yeah, I've been struggling.
I got to tell you, listener, I know I'm learning a lot. I don't like that I had to have a firsthand experience to learn, but I am learning a lot. As far as what it really fucking feels like as a family member to be on this side. Oh yeah, a friend,
yeah.
To be on this side of a criminal case like this.
I lived on the same property with her for nearly 2 years.
Absolutely. And she was our neighbor.
Like when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
You know how your iPhone will put pictures up, like from your gallery?
Yeah.
And I have probably like 10,000 pictures, no joke.
Right.
Of course, it picks the one of her hands
holding a duckling
because she loved animals so much.
This woman was a mother first and foremost, a kind and caring and intelligent and hardworking motherfucker.
Amen.
This
firecracker.
This bitch was barely 5 foot, maybe tiny little 90-pound something. Brightest color hair she could pick. Mm-hmm. Brightest tattoos covering her. Mm-hmm. She would, and you mess with somebody she loves. Howdy!
I had even started like a couple months ago. Well, it was a little longer than that. Last time I talked to her on Facebook, sketching a tattoo for her.
Precious.
Yeah, she'll never have it, and it just makes me so sad.
One of us will get it. If I don't get it,
You will not get it. It's ridiculous.
Oh, her best friend will get it. I promise you that. We all want to get 666 on her butt for her because 666 was her favorite.
Yeah. She was a Capricorn, okay?
She was. I don't want to go too much into her personal life.
Those were the things she was proud of.
She went through a lot. She overcame a lot.
Yeah.
She had just bought a house with her partner, and they were renovating. She had so much going.
And she'd worked so
fucking hard.
To get there.
So fucking hard. And the day she was taken, I was not supposed to go to work that day. I went in for 3 hours just to help out, and she came in, and I gave her a big hug, and I whispered in her ear, I got custody. And she said the same thing. She said, we got custody too.
And that is
exactly why she was murdered that night.
Goddamn. She was real good friends with Will, too, and Will's pretty broken up about it, but we want to share her GoFundMe so we can get some money to her family. She has 5 kids.
She was an important member of this community.
Yes.
She worked housekeeping for most, if not all, the Airbnbs in this town, which if you know Eureka Springs, we got more Airbnbs than houses.
There was nobody better.
There was no one better. She taught half this town how to be a housekeeper.
Damn right she
Most
did.
people who have said...
I cleaned with her.
Yeah, most people have said, yeah, she trained me. I am a good housekeeper. I have gotten X, Y, and Z jobs because she trained me. Mm-hmm. Now, like, just to give a quick backstory.
She told me I weren't that good at it. And I was like, that's right, Sophie, I'm not.
She said I drive crazy, so I couldn't drive the work van anymore.
She did tell me you drove crazy.
I thought I drove fine. But yeah, just a tiny backstory real quick before we give out her GoFundMe information. She has 5 kids. She has a 2-year-old as the youngest, and the oldest, Cypress.
I just love that name.
Baby Cypress. Oh my goodness.
So cute.
I don't even want to go into...
Nope, I can't.
Nope.
Cry.
She has 5 kids. The oldest is, oh God, a teenager now.
Marley is 18.
Marley's 18.
Marley's 18 now.
I met Marley when she was like 8.
I know, I met her when she was a little
My
baby.
God.
And
she's blind.
She's blind and she has some
disabled.
disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of her kids, some of them are on the spectrum.
Yeah.
She had some special needs stuff going on. Look, they just
Brilliant
need
mother.
some support.
Brilliant mother.
I don't know how they're going to make it without her.
Yeah. And the woman that did all of this, really quickly, she she has 2 kids, 2 baby daddies. She called one baby daddy up to her house in Missouri, shot him, killed him, left him with his son in the house, sweet baby child, took his car, drove down to Arkansas, shot our friend and her boyfriend, her partner. Yeah. They were practically married.
Yeah.
And he survived. He's in the hospital. She died right there. And then she left those 2 people with the children in the house.
The children were in the house. Yeah.
And then left and turned herself in Aurora, Missouri.
This is all we're covering it, by the way.
This is all we're saying. This is all we're saying. Just so you know the facts of the case. Because the news articles will string this all along as if they're unrequited love and all this stuff.
No, it's not.
No, it was a custody situation. And that bitch couldn't fucking handle the fact that she wasn't good to those kids.
She lost custody.
She lost custody and she couldn't handle that.
That's it.
She couldn't make right and do right. That's what we do as parents. If we lose custody of the children, we do right.
And Willow should fucking know.
Abso-fucking-lutely. It took me 16 years of fighting.
But you did it.
I did it without harming anyone.
That's right. Damn right.
So, there are 5 babies.
And also, I do not like the news, how it makes it sound some like yeehaw bullshit. It wasn't. It's not like that.
They act like it was unrequited love. Like it was a love thing, and they sexualize everything, even if it's romanticizing it.
It's a female perpetrator. So.
It's a female perpetrator.
It's just gross.
And without knowing what she did, you would probably say she's textbook attractive. So they're going to use her face to promote their news. Like, it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
So what is coming from this? What I want to say before we get into the GoFundMe is Sophie's Law. Sophie's Law. We're trying to get Sophie's Law passed so that way court documents no longer have addresses where they don't need to be. This woman would not have found our friend Sophie if it wasn't for the fact that their address was on that court custody papers.
Amen. I've thought that for so fucking long. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once again, someone has to fucking get killed in order for
to get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just mad.
We're pissed. We're pissed. Yeah. I need to go to a rage room and I need to break everything.
I need to go into a fucking K-hole.
Yeah, same energy. All right.
Opposite energy. I want to be put to the ground.
Yeah. GoFundMe, please, if you can. I'm going to be trying my best to donate as much as humanly possible. Our community needs... They need as much support.
People need to turn up for Sophie like she turned up for everybody else. That's all.
Absolutely. And poor Nathan.
Oh, I can't.
I cannot imagine.
I can't imagine Maris waking up and I'm gone like that.
I cannot get the auditory imagery in my mind out of what I think it would be like for Nathan to wake up in that hospital and have to find out what happened.
I just keep thinking about the babies because they were home.
Yeah, they were there.
They must have, poor little things. It really hurts me. It hurts me. And I think about her child, the
Yeah.
shooter's child.
Yeah.
She was there in the home.
She was there.
To see her daddy get hurt, basically her stepmama die, and then her mother's gone. It just breaks me.
You know she loved Sophie.
Of course,
She loved
every
her.
child on earth
You couldn't
loves
not.
Sophie.
But Sophie loved her too, and it's just she did everything to protect her.
My
That wasn't even her biological child, and she did everything to protect her.
My kids love Sophie, and
Yeah.
my middle child babysat for Sophie all the time.
Yeah. It's just devastating.
It is. I just can't.
So, yeah, that's our story. I know a lot of people are asking because a lot of people see it on the news and they're like,
Yes.
oh, Eureka Springs.
Yes, I've gotten a lot of emails.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get a lot of questions too.
So we just wanted to not cover it, but talk about it. That's our
Yeah.
friend, and we hope you donate and we get Sophie's Law. We get some traction on that.
Yeah.
But hey, I just don't want to do business time after this. This is the business.
That was the business. That's our business.
That's our business. And I'm going to go and be sad now.
We love y'all and
Yeah,
we thank you.
This has not been a good start to the year.
January has been the longest month of my entire life.
It felt 3 months long.
It feels 3 years long.
So in January, you all know, like Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, my car just died in the most spectacular way. I didn't get a car until January 14th. I get a car, and then the next 2 days, my water heater breaks and my phone.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know about your water heater because your phone broke.
I couldn't bitch to you about it because I had no phone.
Sorry to laugh, but...
No, it's fine.
It's a nervous laugh.
almost all my problems, except for my water heater, which really fucking sucks. But it's just been one thing after another, and I'm fucking fried.
Yeah.
And I you know what I hate? Is I just keep saying this kind of shit on this podcast, and you almost think my life is like a clown show. And it is. I just wanted to quit. I just want us all to have a nice time.
I want to have the most boring life.
I've said
I
this.
want to watch butterflies flutter
Oh, that's nice.
without
I
a
like
care in the world.
That's a good time to have.
Nowhere to be, nothing to do.
I'm gonna go sit in a stream and look at tadpoles.
You know what I haven't been in forever?
What?
Bored.
No, I don't know what the meaning of that is.
Doesn't that sound delicious?
I just don't know. It's so far away.
But yeah, we love y'all. Thank you
Yes.
for listening.
We appreciate
You
very
really
much.
do.
We have some changes coming to the podcast soon,
Yeah.
but they're very good, and you'll be very excited about them. But I'm not going to announce them right now.
We will later.
Very soon. So I'm going to go now. Bye. Say
Bye.
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 Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/Cruelty has all the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.